What's up? What it do, Says So Squad and Scandalites? This is Ashley with Ashley Says So, and I am back with another old Hollywood scandal video. And let me go ahead and say, ain't no intro for Michael Jackson, baby. Now, you're either gonna love this video or you're gonna hate it. But either way it goes, we're about to get down to the nitty gritty, and it sure enough is a scandalous thing, child. Let's get to it after this disclaimer. Everything in this video is alleged. It is gossip, tea, and scandal that I get from everywhere. Make sure you guys do your own research. Michael Joseph Jackson was born on August the 29th, 1958 in Gary, Indiana. His mother's name was Catherine Jackson, and his father's name was Joseph Jackson. And on top of Michael, the Jacksons had at least 9 more children. Now, we are not going to spend forever talking about Michael Jackson's childhood because we pretty much already know everything about it. We know that by the time Michael was 6 years old, he was already on his way to becoming the lead singer of his sibling group, the Jackson 5. We know that Michael's father, Joe, was allegedly physically abusive to Michael and his siblings. And what we heard in the Joe Jackson video was that Joe possibly was aware of his sons being actually abused. But notice I said aware. So I'm not saying that Joe Jackson allegedly did any of that type of abuse to his children or his sons. There were rumors on the streets that someone else was doing these things to his sons. And that by itself is a very long story. And it's all wrapped up in the Joe Jackson story. So if you want to hear that full breakdown, which is a great breakdown, please go watch the Joe Jackson video. Now, since we're only going to focus in on Michael's scandals, we're gonna jump ahead a little bit into his story. And the first rumors will be a little lightweight because we're gonna be talking about his alleged relationships. But as we go forward in this video, things are going to get much deeper and much darker. So let's jump into the scandal, child, the scandal. Now, the first person that I want to bring up in the relationship segment is Michael's alleged relationship with actress Tatum O'Neal. And per this rumor, Tatum and Michael met sometime in the early 70s when Tatum O'Neal was 12 years old and Michael was 17. Now, the folks say that the reason that Tatum and Michael became so close at such a young age is because they were always around each other. Pretty much every time Michael found himself at an event, Tatum would be there. Whenever Michael was at a party enjoying himself, Tatum would be there. And this could have been just because they were both young, popular teen stars at this time. You know, maybe they just kind of ran in the same circles. Or it could have been a more nefarious, well thought out reason why these two simply were just always meeting up somewhere. Whatever the reason, because they were always around each other, somebody suggested that Michael and Tatum should start going on dates with each other. Tatum is only 14 and Michael is 19 at this time, but the person, the adult that is suggesting this feels like, oh, well, that's fine. These two are at an age where they can go out alone. They don't need any adult chaperones. Let these two young people have fun. Well, Tatum and Michael do go out on a few dates. They might go dancing, they might go out to eat, but then on one of these dates, Tatum suggests that they should go back to her place. And then when they got to Tatum's place, Tatum further suggested that they should go back into her bedroom. Now, if you're wondering why a 14-year-old girl was allowed to invite a 19-year-old man back into her home where no adults were present, and not only that, back into her bedroom where there certainly were no adults present, it is because there most likely was an adult present. Only this was an adult that Michael couldn't see. Now listen closely because it's about to get deep. You see, Tatum O'Neal was raised in a super dysfunctional family. And if you watched my video about her father, Ryan O'Neal, oh baby, you heard about that dysfunction firsthand. Like, it was a mess. And not only did Tatum grow up in dysfunction, if you followed anything about her life, especially in her young adult and teen years, you can clearly see that when Tatum was a child, she was used and abused pretty much all the time. At one point, she was even made to date a 75-year-old man when she was only 15. So the point I'm trying to get across is that allegedly, Tatum O'Neal was used as a pawn several times when she was young, meaning a so-called handler would send her out to do things so they could maybe get blackmail on somebody. Or maybe they wanted to make a deal with somebody and that somebody requested some time with Tatum in order to seal that deal. Now, like I said, this is all just alleged, but hearing that and putting that together with what Michael said about his time with Tatum, it almost seems that somebody was trying to set Michael up. Because what Michael said is that as soon as he got back to Tatum's house and he went into her bedroom, Tatum suddenly became like a grown woman. Baby says she came up out of that shell and started doing all kind of kissing, rubbing, smooching, and pushing all up on him. So much so that Michael became frightened and he ended up leaving because he didn't know what the heck was going on. How could it be that this girl that had been acting kitty and like a teenager this whole time when they were dealing with each other suddenly become or start acting like a sex-crazed maniac? According to the researchers in the Michael Jackson conspiracy community, somebody most likely had been trying to use Tatum to seduce Michael, maybe to try to get blackmail or try to corner Michael in some sort of way. But when they found out that Michael's shy persona wasn't just a Hollywood act and he really was terrified of intimacy on that level, those handlers or whatever they were must have been sitting up there with their hair blew back. Just because these people failed this time did not mean that they wouldn't try again. But for right now, let's move on to the next rumored relationship, Stephanie Mills. And this was said to have happened sometime while Stephanie was on Broadway starring as Dorothy in the play The Wiz. Now, I'm not sure if Michael was around Stephanie to prepare for his later role in the film The Wiz, or if he was just there to watch the play, but it's claimed around this time Michael and Stephanie became very close friends, and somewhere along the line, this friendship allegedly developed into a relationship. Now, this relationship was said to only have lasted about a year or a year and a half, and Michael was said to be shy the whole time. In fact, it only seems like the furthest that the two went is they kissed each other. But per Stephanie, Michael must know how to do some jujitsu with his tongue, baby, because she said he was a great kisser. Michael's next rumored relationship was with Brooke Shields. And this relationship is kind of weird because I guess it really wasn't a relationship. Like, there's so many different versions of the story, but what it appears to be is that Brooke and Michael were really just friends, but their management teams kind of pushed them together, kind of wanted them to be seen together to bolster their popularity, and bolster the talk about them. And actually, while we're on this point, not too long ago, Brooke Shields kind of confirmed this is the way that her relationship was with Michael. But from the way she put it was like, Michael's team wanted him to be seen with me and, they were pushing for that. But no, ma'am. Because yes, Brooke Shields was huge in the 1970s and the early 80s. But by the time 1984 came around, Brooke's career was nowhere near what it was a few years earlier. So, I understand what Brooke was trying to say, but ma'am, when you look at the popularity between both of y'all, seems like you would have benefited from this way more than Michael would have benefited from it. And this next person I'm about to mention, I'm not sure if her and Michael were actually in a relationship, but I do know that they were pretty close at one point. And actually, people think her son may be Michael Jackson's, and this is singer Mickey Howard. But I'm here to tell you that I have it on the highest authority. Mickey Howard's son is not Michael Jackson's son. She did not have Michael's baby. Like I said, I ain't mentioning no names, but I got it from the highest authority. Now, this next rumored relationship is highly speculative and possibly highly inappropriate. And this is the rumored relationship of Michael and Diana Ross. Now, the folks say that from a child all the way up until he was an adult, Michael was in love with Diana Ross. He was so in love that it is said that during his teen years and adult years, he constantly begged Diana Ross to be with him. And gossip claims while Diana Ross never gave into the idea of being with Michael, she definitely may have given him some of that Forrest Gump and Jenny type TT. Let me explain. See, gossip claims that because Michael Jackson was so caught up in Diana Ross and was always asking her to be with him, that sometime while he was between the age of 16 and 21, Diana invited Michael into her home. Allegedly, he stayed there for 3 days and 3 nights, and during his time there, they worked on music, they watched movies, they ate, and they had fun. And then Diana gave him some of that baby love. The reason I called it some of that Forrest Gump Jenny TT TT, is because the folks say that the reason that Diana allegedly slept with Michael during this time period is because she was trying to quell his desire for her, so he could just stop begging to be with her. But if Diana was truly trying to quell Michael's obsession with her, baby, it backfired terribly. Because the folks say that after these alleged smash sessions, Michael became even more obsessed with Diana. So much so that he would get jealous of her being close to anybody else in his presence. But that ain't nothing, honey. Some people say that Michael became so obsessed with Diana Ross that he started wanting to be Diana Ross. Like he started getting surgery to change his looks to mimic Diana Ross, especially around his eyes. Now, to move on, there are claims that there may have been a brief flirtation between Michael Jackson and his Thriller model, Ola Ray, but I couldn't find any real information to support that theory, so, I'm not sure how true that was. Now, in order to move on to Michael Jackson's next real relationship, which actually turned into a marriage, we gotta get a little deeper and darker into his scandals. Because the marriage I'm speaking on happened in 1994, but in 1993, Michael was hit with his first round of sexual assault allegations. Now, this is a deep dive video, so let's just start with the basics of it. The year is 1993, and Michael Jackson is on top of the world. All of his music is selling, he is looked at like the king of everything, and he is a beacon for children all across the world. And Michael likes to hang out with these children a lot. And per Michael, his reason for doing this was because he had a soft spot for children. He loved children, really felt deeply about them, and he kind of wanted to be a second parent, or better yet, maybe an older sibling to these children. So because of this, Michael has several sleepovers at his house for selected children, and these kids' parents have no problem sending their children to Michael's mansion. Well, in July of 1993, one of these children who attended these sleepovers, a boy by the name of Jordan Chandler, claims that Michael has been actually abusing him. Before Michael knows it, he is labeled a PDF file. Some people are even asking to boycott his music. He's also being investigated by the police. So what the heck just happened here? How did the king of the world pretty much just suddenly fall from grace? Well, let's try to break it down because things were absolutely not as they seem. You see, Michael had first met Jordan Chandler back in May of 1992. And what happened is that Michael was in Los Angeles and he was driving down the road and his car ended up breaking down. And so he pulled over to a car rental place. And the owner of this car rental place was a man by the name of David Schwartz, who turned out to be Jordan Chandler's stepfather. And so when Michael comes in asking to rent a car, David Schwartz is flabbergasted. He is starstruck. But he tells Michael that he knows someone that would be even more starstruck. And this is his stepson, Jordan Chandler. He goes on to explain to Michael how Jordan is his biggest fan, and he calls his wife, June Chandler Schwartz, and he asks her to bring their son, his stepson, up to the shop so the boy could meet Michael Jackson. So June walks in with little Jordan, and Michael and Jordan become acquainted. And by the end of the visit, the family is so delighted with Michael that David, the father, asks Michael, "Hey, Michael, can you exchange phone numbers with Jordan and maybe call him sometime? Because, look at his face. This has really brightened up his day." To which Michael agrees. They exchange phone numbers, and then Michael leaves. Well, a few days pass, and Michael is allegedly having a day where he's surrounded by children. He's invited a whole bunch of children around. And during this time, he thinks of Jordan, and so he ends up calling Jordan. And they converse about anything a 12-year-old boy will want to talk about. And as these type of conversations continued over the next several weeks, if not several months, Michael gets close to not only Jordan, he gets close to the whole family. David, June, Jordan's siblings. In fact, he starts to invite the whole family over to his house. Not only that, Michael takes them on trips. At one point they went to Las Vegas. They all went to Monaco. Michael is just with these people a lot. They're spending whole days and nights together over at Michael's mansion. And then sometimes Michael would even spend the night over at the family's home. And this is the part that sticks out, because when Michael did stay over at the family home, David and possibly June too would encourage Michael to sleep in the bedroom with their boys. Now this right here sounds weird, right? But it also sounds very similar to those rumors and speculations surrounding Michael Jackson and Tatum O'Neal, a setup to have Michael blackmailed at some point. Maybe they're pushing Michael in there just to see if he has some of those PDF foul tendencies. And if he does, maybe David Schwartz or somebody else could be outside the door with a video camera trying to see what footage they could get. But if David and June Schwartz were trying to blackmail Michael, it failed miserably. Because even though Michael did sleep in the room with those boys, he didn't touch them not one time. And I know a lot of you guys, especially you guys that know this story, are out there saying, no, Ashley, there's no way that David Schwartz could have been trying to get blackmail on Michael Jackson because he helped Michael Jackson later on. And I understand exactly where you guys are coming from. But just hold on and let me get the rest of the story out of the way. So to move on with what I was saying, in this theory of David Schwartz possibly trying to blackmail Michael, it failed. Because first of all, there was no footage to get. And then second of all, somebody got to Michael first. And that person was Evan Chandler, a dentist and a screenwriter who was Jordan Chandler's biological father. Now, to get into details regarding Evan Chandler, I'm not sure how him and Michael Jackson became close. All I know is that Evan Chandler ended up developing a relationship so close to Michael Jackson that he started coming over to Michael's house too. And he also would have several personal phone calls with Michael Jackson. Now, Michael seemed cool with Evan, just like he was cool with the rest of Jordan's family. But then Evan really started to pry his way into Michael's personal life. And not only that, he started asking Michael for large lump sums of money. He even got so bold, this man actually told Michael that he expected a wing to be built onto Neverland Ranch so that he and Jordan could live there and be at Neverland Ranch daily with Michael. All paid for by Michael, by the way. And this type of craziness right here is when Michael Jackson started to pump the brakes. He told Evan that no, he didn't think it was a good idea that this man move into Neverland Ranch with him, and he certainly was not footing the bill to add on another wing to the ranch for him. And this made Evan Chandler upset. But what made him even more upset is that after Michael told him no to these requests, Michael also started distancing himself. He wouldn't answer the phone for Evan Chandler anymore. He never invited Evan Chandler over to the house anymore. But this has nothing to do with Jordan. So in June of 1993, Jordan and Michael speak like they always do, and either Jordan by himself or Jordan and his brother want to come over and spend the night with Michael at Neverland. So Michael says yes, the boys come over, and when it's time to go, the other brother, I believe, went home with his parents, David Schwartz and June Chandler, but Jordan goes home with his father, Evan. Well, while Jordan is staying with his father during this period, his father starts to ask him questions like, has Michael ever touched him, ever abused him? And Jordan tells his father no. Well, after Evan is told no, he suddenly decides out of nowhere that Jordan needs his wisdom tooth pulled. You know, he is a dentist. You know, even though Jordan hasn't been complaining about his wisdom teeth, you know, Evan feels like they need to be pulled. So Evan puts Jordan under a heavy dose of sodium amytal and he pulls Jordan's teeth. And right after he pulls it, while Jordan is still under the influence, he asks Jordan again several times, has Michael ever done anything to you? Has he hurt you in any way? Jordan says no again. Then Evan says, listen, Jordan, Michael is going to get in a lot of trouble because I feel like you're not telling me the truth. I feel like you're not being open about him abusing you. So I'm going to ask you again, has Michael ever touched you in any way? And you know, you better think about your answer or Michael's going to be in big trouble. And so Jordan, still under the influence and realizing that the answer he's been giving his father doesn't seem to be the right answer, tells his father, yes, Daddy, Michael has touched me. He has abused me. This right here is all Evan Chandler needed to hear. he immediately calls his ex-wife June and her husband David Schwartz to inform them that Jordan said that Michael has touched him. He also starts looking for a lawyer to sue Michael. Now notice what I said. He called his ex-wife and her husband, and he called a lawyer. And now we're about to come to a twist in the story. Because remember when I was talking about the theory that David Schwartz may have been trying to set Michael up for blackmail? And do you also remember when I was saying, I know some of y'all ain't gonna agree with that because y'all gonna say, Ashley, David tried to help Michael. David tried to help Michael. The reason people are saying that Dave Schwartz first tried to help Michael is because when Evan first called Dave and his ex-wife to report on what Jordan said, Dave got off the phone with Evan and he called Evan back and he recorded the phone call. And on this phone call, Evan pretty much admitted that he was upset that Michael had cut him off. You know, Michael ain't talking to him no more. And since he's upset about that, the only right way to deal with Michael and get Michael's attention is to sue Michael. Now, that ain't verbatim, of course, but I promise you, if you look up the record of that recorded phone call of what was said on that phone call, that's pretty much what it said. And so again, this is the reason that people feel like Dave Schwartz was trying to help Michael, because he pretty much got Evan Chandler on a phone call admitting that, hey, you know, I don't know if this man did anything to my son or not, but I'm about to sue him because he cut me off. But once again, if you think Dave Schwartz is completely innocent just because of this phone call, just listen to the rest of the story. And to continue the story, Evan Chandler ended up finding a lawyer by the name of Barry Rothman, and Barry Rothman immediately sent out letters and made calls to Michael's team, informing them that Evan Chandler, the father of Jordan Chandler, was saying that Michael has abused his son, you know, and he is coming with the lawsuit. He wants $20 million to settle this thing right now. Well, as you can imagine, when Michael's lawyers came to him with this information, Michael is sitting there looking like $20 million from who? You know, I ain't do nothing to that doggone boy, and I'm not giving him no $20 million. And so Michael's lawyers basically told Barry Rothman and Evan Chandler, if you feel like Michael really did this, then you need to prove it in court. Now, mind you, nothing had been said in the media at this point so far. But as soon as Michael's lawyers got back and told these people that we're not paying this money, baby, the media exploded. And this is because Evan and his lawyers started playing hardball. You know, they told the media what was going on, and the media crucified Michael Jackson. He was definitely proclaimed guilty by the media as well as most of the public before any trial could get started. And funnily enough, at the end of this whole process, there wouldn't be a trial anyway. Not only would there not be a criminal trial, there was also no civil trial for the lawsuit either. And let me tell you why. But in order to explain this, I need to ask you guys a question first so you guys can understand the whole process deeply. So check me out, okay? Let's say someone is murdered, okay? Well, in those cases, did the murderer first go to trial to prove their guilt or innocence, or was their first trial to pay off the family for wrongful death? Most of you are going to answer, Ashley, when they first go to trial, they go to see if they're guilty or innocent first. Now, if you guessed that or thought that, you are correct. Almost every single trial throughout history, that has been the way of things. But in Michael Jackson's case, these two were swapped around, so the civil trial or the lawsuit trial would come first, and then the criminal trial would come second. Excuse me, in what world is it right to make a person pay out money for a lawsuit and you haven't even proven liability yet? How does this happen? Let me break it down for you. I've already told you that Evan Chandler hired a lawyer named Barry Rothman, right? Well, Barry Rothman had a secretary that worked in his law office by the name of Jerldean Hughes. And per Jerldean Hughes, she overheard several conversations between the lawyer, Barry Rothmore, and the Santa Barbara County District Attorney, a man by the name of Tom Snedden, that showed that they may have been working together. And the reason they were working together is allegedly Barry Rothman was trying to convince the DA Tom Snedden to switch things around in this case and make the civil trial come first. So Michael would have to pay out on a lawsuit, regardless of if he was found innocent or guilty. Now the question is, why would a district attorney, a man of the law, why would this even matter to him? Why would he even consider switching around whether civil trial came first instead of the criminal trial? Well, most people speculate he also was promised some of that lawsuit money. So if the criminal trial would have came first and Michael would have been found innocent, this probably would have led to him being found not liable in the civil trial. And if he was found not liable, nobody would have been getting paid on that doggone civil trial. That lawsuit would have fell through. So in Jerldean Hughes' mind, this is why she kind of speculated or thought that the DA Tom Snedden and Barry Rothman were working together. She felt so deeply about this that she ended up writing a book that implied that she knew that Michael Jackson was totally innocent, and she knew that people, all of these different people, had conspired against him to make him pay out on this lawsuit. Baby, some folks have even said some of Michael's lawyers were conspiring with the other side because they had also been offered some of that doggone lawsuit money. You see, because when Michael Jackson was first hit with the allegations, he employed a lawyer by the name of Bert Fields. And to be honest with you, it truly seemed like Bert Fields was on the up and up with Michael Jackson. But two things happened to mess this up. First of all, the Jackson family got too involved. And secondly, because of their involvement, they brought on another lawyer who had questionable motivation. So to further explain how all of this went down, when all of this stuff got started against Michael, Bert Fields, the good lawyer, was doing his law work the way he knew how. Whenever he was interviewed about the case and what was going on with Michael, Bert Fields was just telling the truth. He would tell people that, Michael Jackson has canceled his tours, and it is because he is in rehab because he has an addiction problem. Well, here go the Jackson family. Bert, I don't think you're doing your job right. You making Michael look bad. The public don't need to know all that. And so Bert Fields is like, okay, but that is strike number one in his eyes because, he can't do his job like he want to do. And then something else happened to put Bert off. And this is when he was doing yet another interview. And in this interview, the reporter asked Bert if he thought that Michael Jackson was going to be put on trial, the criminal trial. And Bert says, yes, I feel like a criminal trial is imminent. It's right around the corner. Yes, I think Michael is going to go to trial. Well, here come the Jackson family again. Bert, why would you say that? Why would you say that when you're saying that Michael is going to go to trial? That makes him look guilty. You ain't doing your job right. But no, sir, no, ma'am, Jackson family, you guys are not lawyers. See, while you out here thinking Bert is just trying to make Michael look bad and make him look guilty, what the man was really doing was putting it out to the world and the public that a criminal trial should come first. That way, if the other team got what they wanted by having the civil trial come first, the public could at least be like, hold on, something don't seem right. You know what I'm saying? Why is a civil trial coming before a criminal trial? So the man had a method in everything that he was doing. But again, because the Jackson family didn't like what Bert said, they brought in another lawyer. And this lawyer went right behind Bert and he said, well, Bert is just kind of hopped up on emotion. He's talking out of turn. He shouldn't have said that he thinks a criminal trial is imminent. He just we don't have any word on that right now. And this right here, this other lawyer coming up and saying this right after what Bert said, this really infuriated Bert Fields. So this was strike number 2. And strike number 3 for Bert was when the judge actually denied his motion of having the criminal trial first, meaning that Evan's lawyer, Barry Rothman, had won. He had succeeded in getting the civil trial to come before the criminal trial. And so Bert Fields was just done. You know what I'm saying? At this point, he feel like everybody doggone crazy. And so he ends up resigning. Well, as soon as he does, Michael's new lawyer, the one that came up behind Bert saying what he's saying, he steps to the forefront and he allegedly immediately starts talking to Michael as well as the rest of the Jacksons about settling. You know what I'm saying? We just need to pay these folks the $20 million and just get it over with. Get on out of here. Even when Michael is saying, look, I don't mind going through the process. I don't mind even going through the criminal trial. I don't have nothing to hide. Well, no, they already got the civil trial first. Just settle and it'll just wipe everything out. which is really strange for the lawyer that's supposed to be representing Michael to be so gung-ho on settling. Unless he was also in the deal for getting some of that lawsuit settlement money. Now, I'm not saying, once again, that this man was. It's all alleged, once again. All I know is that Michael didn't give in easily. Even with this new lawyer talking about settle, Michael still did not decide to settle. As a matter of fact, the man held on for another 2 to 3 months until January of 1994, his lawyer finally convinced him Michael just settled. It is alleged that Michael cried the whole day. But anyway, January 94, Michael settles with Evan Chandler. The district attorney, Tom Sneddon, is telling the public, it don't matter if he settled. I don't care about that civil trial. I don't care about that. I still got to do the criminal trial. I'm finna get him. Baby, that criminal trial disappeared 2 months later. Ain't nothing happened. You know why? Because first of all, everybody who was supposed to get paid from the lawsuit got paid from the lawsuit. The second reason the criminal trial disappeared is because there was no evidence to get a criminal trial on Michael. And the third reason that it quietly disappeared is because Jordan Chandler, the alleged victim, said that he wasn't going to testify against Michael. Matter of fact, he told the DA and everybody else he refused to get up on that stand and testify against Michael. So like I said, the whole thing just kind of went up in smoke. And it's so in your face that these people may have taken Michael for a ride and taken all his money that one of the Chandlers, somebody in their family, printed a book. And in that book, it said if Michael had went ahead and paid the $20 million demanded of him in August, he would have still been known as the world's most famous entertainer instead of the world's most famous PDF file. Now, who would add that in their book when they're a part of the victim's family that was allegedly assaulted? But let's move on so I can tie the rest of the loose ends on this story up. And that is the theory on Dave Schwartz possibly trying to blackmail Michael when he was telling Michael to sleep with his sons. Well, the reason that a lot of people believe that theory is because after this lawsuit with Evan Chandler, rumor has it that Dave Schwartz allegedly tried to come to Michael under the angle of, Michael, I am so sorry that happened to you, man. That's why I was trying to help you out. That's why I was trying to record Evan and catch him up saying he was trying to use you for the money. So can we still be cool? Can I still get money from you? Can I hang with you? But notice I said that he allegedly tried to come to Michael with this angle because gossip claims that he never was able to get in touch with Michael like that because once all of this had happened, Michael had pretty much done away with the whole family. Well, the folks say Dave Schwartz became angry just like Evan Chandler had become angry. And this is when Dave Schwartz came up with his own lawsuit against Michael, saying that he now was 100% sure that Michael had abused his stepson Jordan. And he also blamed Michael for breaking up this whole family with his vile actions. And he felt Michael should pay him $50 million or $30 million, one of those. So this is why people feel like Dave Schwartz was possibly trying to get some blackmail footage on Michael Jackson earlier in their relationship. Because clearly the first time that things didn't work out for him, here he comes with a lawsuit. But luckily somebody somewhere decided to give Michael a break this time, and this lawsuit ended up being thrown out. Now, to move on with Michael's story, while Michael was going through this first set of allegations, he formed a very tight bond with Lisa Marie Presley. Through this process, he and Lisa used to talk all the time. He used to cry to her. She believed that he was innocent every step of the way. And so they got married in May of 1994. Now, I truly think that Lisa Marie Presley was the first woman to really connect with Michael on a deeper level. She actually said that Michael lost his virginity to her. And if this is true, I believe it's because Michael felt like Lisa understood him. And also she would let him take the lead as the man of the relationship. Well, whenever Michael would take the lead. Lisa wanted him to do that. She tried to mold him into a man, tried to mold him from his childish, ways and kind of turn him into an adult male. And so Lisa was said to be a big backbone to Michael. But being this to Michael was draining. He was a hard case. place. Like Lisa would try to monitor him when he was taking his painkillers. She would try to tell him, Michael, you need to stop that stuff. Michael would get mad. I'm grown. I'll make my own choices and I'm going to live my life on my terms. Then Lisa would try to warn him of the certain friends he kept around and just people that he would bring into his life. Like, for instance, she kind of felt like he should start kind of pulling away from being the savior of all children. But Michael would tell her, the children needed him. Even if the parents tried to set him up and get money from him, oh well, it was what it was. He said it was not the children's fault. He was still going to be involved with the children. And so all of this just became too much for Lisa after a while. And then that's not even all. The big thing that Lisa was tired of is that, like, when she would warn him about this so-called business partner or this so-called friend and they ended up screwing Michael, he would want to cry to her and she would have to pick up the pieces and make it all better again. So it drained her physically, spiritually, and she said she even stopped having the energy for the children that she had before she married Michael. So by late 1995, Lisa Marie Presley was already one foot out the door. And then Michael did something that would drive her all the way out of the door. And that is when he started talking about having children. He wanted her to have his child and Lisa didn't want to because she knew she was halfway out the door. And also she just didn't feel like Michael was ready to be a parent to a child. She just felt like things were unstable. But Michael wouldn't take no for an answer, so he kept asking. And since Lisa kept saying no, Michael started talking to other people about his problems, other people about his want to have children. So this allowed for people who saw Michael as a dollar sign to try to come in and fix this problem that Michael had in his life. And one of those people was allegedly Michael's dermatologist. He told Michael that if Lisa didn't want to carry his child, Michael should just let someone else carry his child. And he knew the perfect person, his receptionist, a lady by the name of Debbie Rowe. Well, Michael is so hung up about having a child, he thinks this is a great idea. So he goes home to Lisa Marie and he asks her once again about having a baby. She says no. So then Michael says, well, what do you think about someone else having a baby for me? I have a friend. Her name is Debbie Rose. She's wanting to have the baby for me. Is that okay? Lisa Marie says that this ticks her off to no end. She exploded and basically told Michael, do what you want to do. That's fine. Go have a baby by somebody else. That's fine. And soon after this, Lisa files for divorce. And so now that Lisa Marie is out of the way, the race is on. The media starts working double time. And luckily, this time it is working in Michael's favor. And what it's doing is trying to build a story around Debbie Rowe and Michael Jackson, trying to build up this great love story. And the reason that the media is working double time like this is because Michael's divorce with Lisa isn't even finalized yet, but already Debbie Rowe is pregnant. As a matter of fact, per rumor, she got pregnant in either May or June of 1996, and Lisa and Michael's divorce wasn't finalized until August of 1996. And in order to make the babies and everything look legit, right after the divorce was finalized, Michael and Debbie had to get married, which they did in November of 1996. So that's why the media was trying to paint them as lovebirds. But anyway, Michael is just ready for his child to be born, which happens in February of 1997. Now, here's where some messy scandal and some more theories come in. Because everybody and their mama knows that Michael Jackson and Debbie Rowe didn't really share a bed to conceive this baby. So Debbie Rowe was certainly artificially inseminated. But according to this first conspiracy theory, what everybody didn't know, including Michael Jackson, was that Debbie was not inseminated with Michael's sperm. Matter of fact, allegedly Debbie was inseminated with the dermatologist's sperm. And again, there are two theories concerning this matter. And the first theory says that Michael Jackson was fine with this because his true goal was to have rainbow children, like Josephine Baker, have children from different races all over the world type thing. But the second theory about this claims that Michael Jackson was not okay with this. And according to the believers of this theory, Michael Jackson was pretty much tricked into fathering a child that was not biologically his. Matter of fact, they say Michael was allegedly so upset about this that he may have made a reference to this to one of his songs that was released in the year 1997. And this song was called Ghosts. And in this song, in one part, he says, "Who gave you the right to shake my family tree. And so some people believe this was a reference to Michael's dermatologist or somebody else sneaking his sperm into Debbie instead of Michael's. Now, I know one of the big questions that I had, and I'm sure y'all do too, is that if Michael was supposedly so angry about Prince not biologically being his son and all of that, then why did he accept Prince, raise Prince, things like that? And to this, the conspiracy theory believers answer that this was just Michael. He definitely was not going to just ship this child back or leave this child in the cold just because of what somebody else had done. Now, if you're wondering why somebody would try to trick Michael by using their own semen or DNA to insert into a child that Michael was going to raise, it would essentially boil down to that person wanting to insert his bloodline into Michael's money. Like, let's say something were to happen to Michael, Prince would most likely inherit Michael's money, and then that dermatologist or whoever could come back in later on years down the line and say, Prince, I just got to tell you the truth. I am your father. And then if Prince is endeared to him or is happy about this, that person could easily get access to some of Michael's money. And it even goes deeper than that. Let's say the dermatologist even passes away. Well, the dermatologist's children, his real biological children, could still come down the line and be like, Prince, I am your long lost brother or sister. And again, they most likely would get access to Michael's money. So there are a lot of reasons that somebody will want to sneak their bloodline into Michael Jackson's money or bloodline or whatever. Y'all know what I'm talking about. And then some people claim that the inseminations for Prince and Paris Jackson actually came from Jewish people because for some reason the Jewish wanted to mix their bloodline with Michael's bloodline. But I really don't feel like they would have had to do any artificial insemination because, baby, that was sold up with Debbie Rowe. Because allegedly Debbie Rowe is Jewish. And actually, to continue speaking on Debbie Rowe, I guess she was just contracted to Michael to be married to him for 2 years or have 2 of his kids or something like that. Because, baby, about a year after Paris was born, Debbie was shooting the deuces. She gave Michael full custody, signed over rights, and everything else. Now, this to me is where this theory of, him being upset that he's not these kids' biological daddy falls apart because of the birth of Blanket. This child also allegedly is not Michael's biological child. So maybe the second theory is the true theory. Maybe Michael did want to have rainbow children or something like that, but I guess he just didn't get around to the Chinese and the black child. Maybe I don't know. But to move on, by the year 2000, Michael was still making questionable decisions. He suddenly started hanging around certain rabbis as well as certain businessmen who were supposed to be his friends. One of those friends introduced Michael to a new young boy to bring into his circle of child friends. This boy's name was Gavin Arvizo. And Gavin was allegedly suffering from a super deadly form of cancer. So, Michael starts taking care of Gavin. He's making this big connection with Gavin, just doing what Michael does. Well, while Michael is becoming best friends with Gavin Arvizo, his album Invincible drops. And unfortunately, the album doesn't do well. And Michael feels like this, as well as other bad things that had happened to him recently, happened because Tommy Mottola, the head of Sony Records, was trying to sabotage him. And the reason that Michael felt like Tommy was doing this was because back in 1984, Sony had a satellite company up under them called ATV, and ATV went under, and Michael bought the ATV music catalog, which included the catalogs of the Beatles and Elvis and many other groups. Buying this catalog would have made Michael untold millions, maybe even billions over the years, because every time a song with Elvis or the Beatles, Michael would get paid. Well, per Michael, Tommy Mottola was a person who felt like an artist, especially a black artist, should not have all of this power. They were just supposed to go out there and sing and dance and get paid whatever little pennies they get, but the real big bucks when it comes to music catalogs and all of that kind of stuff, that is supposed to belong to the studio heads. And since Michael wouldn't agree to sell this music catalog back to Sony or Tommy Mottola, Michael felt like Tommy was sabotaging him. And Michael felt this so deeply that in the year 2002, he stood in front of a crowd of people and told them this. Baby Michael not only told this story, he called Tommy Mottola the devil and a racist and everything else. Did so much that allegedly, right after Michael gave this speech, Tommy Mottola had to resign from Sony because of all of the bad press he received. Well, check me out. Right after Michael did this and Tommy Mottola stepped down, suddenly one of those businessman friends, possibly the same friend that introduced Michael to Gavin Arvizo, comes to Michael with another idea. He is saying that he has a friend named Martin Bashir, and this friend wants to do a documentary on Michael. You know, the documentary is only supposed to be about Michael's home life, what he does around the Neverland Ranch. And so Michael, thinking everything is on the up and up, agrees to do this documentary. And he invites this camera crew into his home, you know, and he's showing them around. Then they want to be introduced to some of the children that are there with Michael that day. And the child they picked to come and sit beside Michael and talk with Michael and everything is Gavin Arvizo. As soon as Gavin Arvizo is by Michael's side, Martin Bashir out of nowhere asks him something about Michael being nice to him. I'm not sure. But whatever the case, the little boy Gavin answers and says, Michael is so nice to me when I stay over, he lets me sleep in his bed. And then Martin Bashir, the interviewer, basically opens up this whole thing on Michael. You know, Michael, didn't you have some problems with that in the past? You know, what is it about you sleeping in the bed with children? And Michael was like, well, I don't sleep in the bed with the children. I let the child have the bed and I'll sleep on the floor. And it's really weird how the whole subject came up about sleeping in the bed anyway. But regardless, once the documentary premiered, the public is in an uproar and they are demanding that Michael is investigated. So the police do an investigation, and while the police are still doing their investigation, Michael ends up going on TV and he ends up doing an interview to explain himself, and Michael became defiant. And he was like, you know, I'm going to continue sleeping in the room with children because I'm not in the bed with them. I'm not doing nothing nasty. That's y'all that's nasty because y'all keep putting y'all's nasty thoughts on us. But, you know, I'm going to continue to be friends with these children, continue to have them in my room. Well, after the interview was over, the police ended up about to wrap up their investigation because they couldn't find anything. However, right before they wrapped it up, or maybe right after they wrapped it up, Gavin Arvizo's father, a man by the name of David Arvizo, ended up claiming that Gavin had admitted to him that Michael had abused him. And this right here was exactly what the police had been waiting on, because see, the DA was still Tom Sneddon. And if you thought Tom Sneddon hated Michael Jackson in 1993, oh baby, by 2003, he really hated Michael's guts because Michael created a song calling out DA Tom Sneddon. So this time, Tom Sneddon ain't worried about no lawsuit money, nothing like that. He wants Michael in jail, and they are going to trial. This trial happened in 2005, but thankfully, Michael Jackson ended up being found not guilty on all counts. Well, even though Michael is ecstatic and kind of gets a boost that he has won against his enemies, he and several other people feel like the only reason that these charges came up was because of that documentary he shot. And also he feels like the only reason that this Martin Bashir came to him with a documentary is because right before that, Michael has spoken out against Tommy Mottola. And so, like I said, Michael and some other people kind of felt like Tommy Mottola was the hand behind all of that. Well, I don't know about that, but what I can say is that allegedly Michael lived a very sad life for the rest of the days of his life. The folks say many people came in and out of Michael's life, you know, and they would take money from him. And then if people weren't stealing from Michael, he was still reckless with his money, you know, purchasing any and everything, stuff he didn't need. He did so much that by the year 2008, Michael Jackson was said to be broke. Matter of fact, Neverland Ranch is in danger of being foreclosed on. Well, once word of this gets around, somebody else comes into the mix, and this is his brother Jermaine. And Jermaine comes and he tells Michael that he has a man on his side that can fix everything. You know, he can get all of Michael's bills paid, you know, and get money back into Michael's pocket. And this man's name was Tomei Tomei. And Tomei Tomei presented himself as a doctor. He also said he was the ambassador to Senegal. But in truth, the man was none of these things that he claimed. Regardless though, Tomei Tomei had come highly recommended from Jermaine, so Michael trusted it. And as soon as Tomei started working with Michael, he became like Michael's head household manager and also was Michael's financial guru. Everything went through him. So throughout 2008 and some of 2009, Tomei is firing people. I'm talking about longtime bodyguards and servants that have been with Michael for years. Tomei is cleaning house. He's bringing in who he wants to bring in. He is allegedly starting to try to control Michael, tell Michael what he can and cannot do. And Michael starts to see himself kind of become smothered by this man, and he becomes afraid of Tomei. And since Michael was feeling like this, the folks say that he started kind of looking for a good reason to get rid of Tomei, and soon he would get that chance. Now, I've already told you Tomei was brought in to get rid of these floor closures. He was brought in to get Michael's life and finances back on track. Well, when he first came into Michael's life, he told Michael that his grand plan to get everything back on track is for Michael to have one last big tour. He told Michael that the tour would only be for 10 shows and Michael would at least be able to pocket $50 million. And all of his bills caught up. If he owed anybody, all of those would be paid with the money he got from this tour. Michael is cool with this, and so he signs off on having a This Is It tour. So this agreement on this tour allegedly happened somewhere in mid-2008. Well, why come on April the 14th, 2009, Michael isn't currently staying at Neverland Ranch, but he gets a phone call where somebody is telling him, hey, I think you need to come to Neverland Ranch. This guy, Tomei, is having an auction and he's auctioning off your personal things. So Michael couldn't believe his ears because Tomei hadn't asked him nothing about this. And rumor has it when he comes and he confronts Tomei says this whole thing about, well, we got to save the ranch, we got to do this. But sir, you just had me sign off on a tour talking about This Is It, talking about that was going to save everything. Well, Tomei is not able to explain himself out of the situation good enough. So Michael uses this as the moment he's been waiting for and he fires Tomei. Michael feels free. He breathes a sigh of relief. The folks say that he's actually calling old employees and asking them to come back and work for him. Well, while Michael is doing this, allegedly Tomei is making his rounds through Michael's family members. The folks say that he met with Catherine, telling Catherine, please tell Michael to hire me back. Michael does not know what he's doing. Only I can save him and only I can save his money, all of this good stuff. But allegedly Catherine told the man, hey, Michael is grown. He makes his own decisions. There's nothing I can do. Also, allegedly, Tomei went to visit Jermaine. I'm not sure what answer Jermaine gave him, but it really didn't matter what Jermaine said because the folks say that Tomei just decided he was going to go back on his own. Baby, I kid you not. These folks say that Tomei just showed up at the Neverland Ranch and just acted like nothing had happened. Went back to telling folks, hey, everything goes through me. Just doing this. Nobody told him to. This man just did this, just came back. Now, this is allegedly when Michael became terrified of Tomei. Clearly this man was going to do what he wanted to do. And I think Michael was just too scared to stand up to him. So per the story or conspiracy, Tomei was fired in April of 2009. Allegedly, he came back in May 2009. Now we are at June 2009. And now it is time for Michael to start rehearsing for his This Is It tour because that tour is supposed to start in July of 2009. So Michael starts to rehearse for his tour, but he is uneasy about this whole thing because, again, allegedly he is scared. And then also it's said that for the rehearsal, it's claimed that they were working Michael to death. They were making him re-rehearse things over and over and over, stuff that he had been doing for 30 years. As a matter of fact, one of Michael's bodyguards said that Michael called him either the night before he passed away or 2 nights before, and Michael was crying and he was telling him, these people are working me to death. They got me practicing and rehearsing over and over. I'm tired. I'm sick. I don't feel good. Also, it's claimed he started to complain that this tour was supposed to only be 10 dates, but these people had pushed it to 50 dates without his knowledge. And it said that Michael was scared that he didn't have the energy to perform for 50 dates. And the bodyguard said that Michael asked him, hey man, can you please come back just to watch over me, please? But the bodyguard said that he was a single parent at this time and he was with his daughter and he couldn't just up and leave her. Well, he claimed that that is when Michael said, man, can you please get in touch with my father Joseph? Can you tell him to call me? Because I feel like he's the only one that can save me now. So that was that conversation with that bodyguard. But there was also testimony allegedly from Michael's children that they would hear Michael on the phone crying to other people. And they also said that many times they heard Michael on the phone arguing with people. And then when he hung up the phone, he would be shaking and crying, saying, they're going to kill me. They are going to kill me. Now, per the story, Michael went to rehearsal on June 24th, 2009, and while he is there, he puts his all into this thing. After rehearsal, when he goes home or back to the home he was staying in, he is exhausted, but he cannot sleep. And so he starts to ask his physician, Dr. Conrad Murray, for milk. And we all know now that that milk was propofol. Well, per Conrad Murray, yes, he had given Michael propofol before, but he was trying to wean Michael off of that. So he told Michael, no, I'm not going to give you that. I'm just going to give you other sedatives, which he did, but allegedly none of those other sedatives worked. And when Michael was still woke at 10 a.m. the next day on the 25th of June, it's claimed that he begged Dr. Murray again, hey, please just give me the milk. This other stuff is not working. I need to rest. Well, the folks say at 10:40 a.m., Conrad Murray obliges. He gives Michael the medicine and he is monitoring Michael, but then at 11:07, Conrad receives a phone call. It's his girlfriend. And so he steps out of the room, I suppose, so he don't disturb Michael with his talking, I'm not sure. But he steps out of the room to talk to his girlfriend. Well, allegedly, soon after Conrad Murray gets that call at 11:07 and steps out of the room, about 5 minutes later, Michael's new head of security guy, a guy by the name of Fahim Muhammad, makes an announcement to several people that he needs to run to the bank, which he does, gets in the car and leaves. And mark that right there because there's a reason that I'm pointing that out. But to continue with the rest of the story, Conrad Murray is still on the phone. The head of security leaves the house. And then finally at 11:51 a.m., Conrad ends his phone call and he walks back in with Michael. This is when Conrad notices that Michael is in critical condition. So Conrad tries to give Michael CPR for a while and then he finally gets on the phone to call 911. And everybody talks about the 911 call and what happens after 911 was dialed, but I want to kind of hone in what happened before 911 was dialed. And to be more specific, what happened in that time period that Conrad Murray left that room and the time period that he came back. What happened between that time? And nobody probably knows for a fact what happened, but baby, I'm gonna tell you. The people in the Michael Jackson conspiracy theory research community believe Dr. Conrad Murray was working in cahoots with security guard Fahim Muhammad and Tomei to get Michael up out of here at the direction of somebody else. And some conspirators believe this somebody else is Tommy Mottola. Other conspiracy theorists believe this somebody else is the police department. And still others believe this somebody else is actually the CIA. And I'm not sure why the CIA would be interested in taking Michael out, but the reason people suspect them as an organization is because of the security guard, Fahim Muhammad. He is a very, very mysterious entity. He first showed up on anybody's radar when he graduated from Sacramento University in 2008 and immediately opened up a very successful investment business called Oasis. But get this, not only did he start a very successful investment business right out of college, also what happened in 2008, that very same year he graduated, he was allegedly hired possibly by Tomei to be Michael Jackson's driver. Now, how does that work? How does a college student that nobody even knows anything about just suddenly open an investment business and then get hired as Michael Jackson's driver? And then very quickly, just within a few months, move his way up to being Michael Jackson's head of security. That's a lot of luck for somebody to have. That sounds more like a plant. And what makes people suspect that Fahim was possibly some kind of plant even more is that after Michael Jackson passed away or he stopped working for Michael Jackson, he immediately went to work for Diddy as his head security guard. As a matter of fact, while he was working for Diddy, Fahim was known as the person to get rid of things. You know what I'm saying? He was known as the person that could make things happen, and he was Mr. Untouchable. Allegedly, people around Diddy and Diddy used to joke about how Diddy's security guard can get rid of anything and anybody because this alleged security guard, Fahim, was said to have a very special relationship with law enforcement. And if this is true, ain't no law enforcement just sitting up there letting a young black man get away with alleged crimes just because they love to see a young black man succeed and don't want to punish a black man. No, most of the time when somebody white or black has a special relationship with law enforcement like that, where they can just do what they want to do, it's a lot of times because that person is doing special favors for law enforcement. And like I said, all of this is alleged. I don't know what's true or false, but in the conspiracy theory community, a lot of them feel like this Fahim Muhammad guy might have been some sort of CIA plant. So to move on, the believers of this theory believe that Conrad gave Michael that initial dose of propofol, and then they theorize that when Conrad left out of the room, that is possibly when this other gentleman came into the room to finish the job by injecting even more propofol into Michael's tubes. And after that gentleman did that, he made a big show of saying, hey, everybody, I gotta run to the bank. I gotta run to the bank, so he could leave the scene. And then what's even more telling is that when this gentleman got back to the scene, which was said to be around 12:15, 12:20 p.m., Michael was already in critical condition. Conrad Murray was already doing CPR. He had already called 911. The ambulance and the cops hadn't even got there yet. But when the staff ran up to Fahim to tell him what was happening, and tell him to go up there and check on Michael, something is happening with Michael, the folks say that Fahim wouldn't go. Matter of fact, Fahim said he wouldn't go upstairs. He said that he liked to follow the rules specifically, and Michael had never told him if he can go up there or not. So, he just wasn't going to risk it. He wasn't going to go up there. Now, this did not make sense to a lot of people. You are the head of security, and the person that you're supposed to secure and protect is having a medical emergency, but you won't go up there because you said that, you were scared you were going to get in trouble if you went upstairs. You didn't know if that was allowed. So, I don't know. All I know is that once the ambulance did make it to Michael's location, they rushed him to the hospital, and Michael Jackson was pronounced dead at 2:26 p.m. He was only 50 years old. His brother Jermaine came out to make the announcement to the world, but a lot of eagle-eyed fans noticed something very strange. And that was the fact that Tomei was beside Jermaine when he was giving the announcement of Michael's death. But remember, allegedly, the last Jermaine had heard from Tomei or about Tomei is that Michael had fired him. So you would think Jermaine would think it was kind of strange, actually, for the guy that Michael had fired to be beside him while he was making this announcement. But hey, I don't know. Maybe Tomei being there had nothing to do with the business of Michael Jackson. Him and Jermaine had been friends before Tomei even met Michael Jackson. Maybe Tomei was just there to support Jermaine as a friend. I don't know. All I can say is that everything in this video is alleged. I got it all from gossip blogs. It may not even be true. None of it. Who knows? But anyways, this is the end of the old Hollywood scandal for Michael Jackson. If you guys like the video, please like the video. If you guys are new here, please subscribe. And I will be back with another video soon. Bye.